good evening, everyone. So before we begin the discussion, let me just quickly introduce our speakers to our audience. So we have our session chair, Ambassador Anil Triganayak, who is a former ambassador of India to Jordan, Libya, and Malta, and he is the advisory board member of Usanas Foundation. Then we have Dr. Kosh Ara. He is a senior visiting fellow at the Crash Institute for Tech Diplomacy and former non-resident senior fellow in the Atlantic Council's Global China Hub. Then we have Vice Admiral Sheikh Hasina, is a former flag officer commanding in chief of the Western Naval Command and chief of Integrated Defense Staff. He is the co-founder of DeepStat. And then we have Atul Sharma. He is a senior environmental and maritime infrastructure expert and vice president of IR Class Systems and Solutions Private Limited. He is the former head of Gujarat Maritime Board Environmental Cell. So thank you everyone for joining us today. And now over to you, Ambassador Triganayak.
Thank you, Preeti, and namaskar to everyone, which encompasses good evening and good morning both. Once again, a very warm welcome to you all, and I must compliment both Abhinav and Preeti for putting together this, and for our esteemed guests, speakers who are dear friends as well, on whose time I can always poach. This is a very, very important topic, but in the recent times, it appeared as if the Russia-Ukraine war, the Israel-Hamas war, or for that matter, the other conflicts or impending conflict between Israel and Iran have stolen away most of the limelight from Indo-Pacific, which is a real threat and a danger, which is currently enhanced because of the US or the Sino-US trade war at the moment. And that is something, so we can look at we can forget about Indo-Pacific at our own peril, strategically speaking. One good thing that happened over time is we have seen that Asia-Pacific got converted into Indo-Pacific, which really mentions the centrality of India and recognition of it being there. As far as India is concerned, I would say that India's hesitant approach initially has been converted into a more proactive approach as far as the Indo-Pacific is concerned or the strategies are concerned. You are all aware that India is the resident power in the Indian Ocean. And even as we speak, there are 30 of our ships, which I'm sure Admiral Sinha will be speaking about, are guarding the sea lanes of communications against the Houthi attacks, against the piracy and others. So India does take upon responsibility in the region. But the superpower contestation has its own dynamic, and that dynamic becomes a binary. And how does India navigate into that, given its approach towards strategic autonomy as well as inclusivity? So if for that, I think the first time that we heard was Prime Minister Modi when he spoke at Shangri-La Dialogue in 2018, where he laid out the contours of India's strategy, which is essentially inclusive, non-confrontational, yet champions the freedom of navigation, and opposition to hegemonism of all kinds, adherence to a rules-based order, including the UNCLOS, and create a multipolarity of stakeholders that helps. But as you all know, that the Indo-Pacific is actually becoming very, very crowded, and you need certain kind of elbow room to work in that. We had more than 24 countries have come out with their own strategies for the Indo-Pacific. Now China feels that this is a containment strategy against that. China and Russia continue to refer to it as Asia-Pacific. But what has India done in the meantime? That is very important. We have been part of the Quad for many, many years, which also started picking up from 2017 onwards. And under President Trump, it acquired another greater traction. And we saw that in this Trump 2.0, the very first meeting Dr. Jaishankar had with Mr. Marco Rubio, the secretary, and followed by a meeting of all the foreign ministers of Quad in Washington, D.C. That was important. So once again, re-emphasized the strength of Quad. Quad is an important dimension of the Indo-Pacific strategy of India, which we consider as something as a global good for the good of the world. And therefore, now it is more important from our point of view because we shall be hosting the Quad Summit this year in India. And as yesterday, Vice President Vance also spoke about this, that President Trump will be traveling to India. So all the leaders will be here later part of the. Now, this also is some other initiative that India has been taking. That is in the context of whether it is IORA, whether it is Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, Indian Pacific Oceans Initiative, or India being the first responder in the region or a net security provider in the region. So all these blend with the positive dimensions of our interactions with our partners, whether they are littoral states or the coastal states. Now, then India has come up with a strategy called Sagar strategy earlier, which was called Security and Growth for All in the region. Now, Prime Minister Modi recently was in Mauritius, and in Mauritius, he expanded that to become into a Mahasagar, which means mutual and holistic advancement for security and growth of all in the regions. Now, this is not merely the words. They have been very actively plugged into various foreign policy approaches and the kind of initiatives that India has initiated or undertaken in the region, whole of the maritime geography. And we were a maritime nation always, we remain a maritime nation, and I'm sure that is something that Admiral Sinha will be talking about. And we have strengthened our dialogues with our partners, be it the Quad partners or outside the Quad in this domain, so that the freedom of navigation is somehow ensured. But then you have these countries which will continue to exercise certain hegemony, and that hegemony will need to be countered, whether through ASEAN centrality, whether through collaborative mechanisms, and eventually through confrontation. So how all that is going to play out is something that we'll hear from our esteemed speakers today. And so I'll stop here, and I'll be very happy to move to our very first speaker today, Dr. Kaush Arya, who's very difficult to get. Of course, we recently met in Delhi, but it is not always easy to get him. He's always on the move and going around all over. So, Kaush, could you tell us about how do you look at it from the U.S. perspective going forward as far as the Indo-Pacific strategy? And what are your comments about India's Indo-Pacific strategy, so to say? Thank you.
No, thanks again, Anil. It's a real pleasure to be with you, and thank you to Abhinav and Preeti for organizing it. Admiral Saib, it's an honor to be with you in your presence. Now, let me just start with narrowing down the focus a little bit. The Indo-Pacific strategy addresses the two oceans, the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. And America being a Pacific country, we've certainly focused more on the Pacific side of it. I think we have not yet focused as much on the Indian Ocean side of it. So I'd like to make my comments more on the Indian Ocean element of the Indo-Pacific, and I think that's more relevant to India anyway. So Indian Ocean, one could argue that historically was perhaps one of the most active water bodies for trade purposes, for travel and sort of distribution of human communities, all those elements from history and back to today. In today's day and world, I think the rise of both the Indo-Mediterranean trade, which is sort of going to be defining global commerce even more so, the so-called IMEC, the India, Middle East, Europe corridor, the relevance of certainly Suez Canal, where more than 30% of the container traffic in the world goes through, the Houthi attacks, the American sort of strong response and continued strong response to that end would be an important element. It also plays into an important issue given the trade disputes that are going forward at the moment between India and China. And if, God forbid, there were ever a more kinetic version of it, then I think that the commercial routes, the supply routes across Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean would again become an important element. Chinese are aware of this. I think the Chinese, whether it's the Ring of Pearls or having, either naval bases or hybrid bases around India, whether it be on its neighbors, sadly now warming relation to the east of it, as it has been towards historically the west of it. All these are concerning issues for India as well, not alone for Maldives, going over to Madagascar, to Mauritius, all the stuff that Ambassador Tringanal just mentioned, Sagar going onto Mahasagar, all those elements. So I think the importance of Indian Ocean is rising in the Western world, which I think has been long overlooked, long taken for granted. I think the two most oceans taken for granted are probably Mediterranean and Indian Ocean. And I think now both Indo-Mediterranean are rising in people's eyes and their importance, both commercial and military importance. Given all that, I think from our side, I have argued, I think several times, that the United States need to have a robust Indian Ocean strategy, specifically directed to it. And as part of that particular strategy, one will have to, for us to sort of have a better look at what the choke points within the ocean body are. And it's a lot to do with sort of elevating India's strategic autonomy and its ability to project power and operations across the Indian Ocean. That ought to be the thrust of it in some ways. And then in response to that is certainly India taking more responsibility, as what Ambassador said, both as a first responder for issues within the ocean, making sure the ocean is not much of a play for foreign powers to be fighting their battles, but at the same time having the area communities reach their peace and prosperity as much as they can. So that's the sort of thrust of it. Towards that end, it's sort of somewhat interesting to see that both the diplomatic thrust of India going over to deep into the Indian Ocean discussions, as Anil mentioned, the recent naval exercises with African colleagues, I think they're all heading in the right trend. For us going forward, and it's important that Vice President Vance is there, even though he may be down in Jaipur for weddings and others, but I'm sure he'll have a chance to talk meaningful discussions with colleagues. It's the place where the two navies, US and America, now have a chance to sort of really come together and have a very robust game plan for next 5-10 years for the ability to sort of build up not only Indian naval capacity, both from assets, and be able to do joint exercises and joint projections, joint forces projections across the oceans. I think that's an important element. Also, India's ability to protect the critical infrastructure, that you already see a lot of sort of Chinese and Russian attacks on critical infrastructure in Baltic Sea and Black Sea, even to some degree in South China Sea. And I think you will find that will probably come to home in Indian Ocean, where again, most of the submarine cables pass through this part of the world. There'll be a lot of oil and gas pipelines, the growing trade. So all these things come to play. So it's a robust area of focus. I think it's an area of a very fertile US-India partnership, particularly in the defense and critical infrastructure. I won't go too far down the road of environment and other issues, not because they're not important, they are, and I think we're going to have somebody cover it. But the notion of having the so-called blue economy, I would rather call them more of an island economies, and then so the resilient island economies within the Indian Ocean. There's another area, fertile area, for partnership and learning of lessons between the Pacific island economies and the Indian Ocean island economies. We haven't really done too much of it. And I think there's a lot of room there for coordination and a community of island economies working together, facing similar issues. So going forward, I would sort of argue for not only a US strong strategy for Indian Ocean, but perhaps for a Quad strategy for Indian Ocean, which sort of lays out some of the things that I talked about in more detail. And it should be, I hope, would be a top item. It should be the frontline item of the Quad summit in India. If India is going to hold a Quad summit, bloody well talk about Indian Ocean strategy. I think it'd be, otherwise it's a wasted opportunity. And for that end, I think this particular discussion that Abhinav has put together with Anil's leadership, it's very timely. I'll stop there. I have to leave at 8:15, but I'll turn it back to Anil and to the Admiral. Thank you.
Thank you, Kosh. You have made so many good points about the Indo-Mediterranean. That's very important, connecting these two, because that's the future that we are looking at today. And of course, greater role for India, and the fact that you have mentioned that some coordination and exchange of experiences or best practices between the Pacific Island nations and the Indian Ocean Island nations are extremely important to do that. And that's a very, very critical point and necessary for keeping them together, because they are very important in that sense. And you also, of course, mentioned about that the United States should have an Indian Ocean strategy, and I'm quite sure that we're going to listen about this. As you know, India and US have a lot of interoperability. Several agreements have been signed towards this end, and the Quad strategy that you are talking about is, of course, both sides will have to put it in such a way that they subserve the mutual interest in that. So these some very important issues, and of course you talked about the India's capability of protecting the critical infrastructure in the Indian Ocean and elsewhere wherever it is possible. So these are very important points, and I'm quite sure that they're going to be taken into account going forward. And now going forward, I'll request Admiral Sinha to share his thoughts about how does he proceed.
Just a small intervention. Dr. Ara has to leave early. Can we have one or two quick questions for him now before we invite?
If there are, yes. Anybody has a question?
Sure. Dr. Ara, I have a question for you. So recently we saw that de-escalation happened on the India-China border. And with the statements coming out from the leaders of both the countries, that is India and China, it seems that the relationship is more or less stable. And we can also say that the goodwill has generated on both the sides, and both the countries, like they seek to enhance or better the relationship despite some of the border issues that are still continuing. So do you think that India will face more difficult choices in the future? I mean, if it really comes about the defense or the military part of the Quad?
Well, again, I think these are always tricky questions, but these are the questions which are very normal and very expected questions of a rising power like India. So India thus far has sort of chosen to and had the luxury of sitting on the sideline, on the fences, whether it be non-aligned movement or now the new version of it, strategic autonomy, all the rest of it. That's all true. So every country needs strategic autonomy. India needs strategic autonomy. Strategic autonomy comes from hard power. It doesn't come from soft power. So India will have to develop hard power to have strategic autonomy. That means for having strategic autonomy for India, it'll have to pick friends which elevate its strategic autonomy, and be wary about adversaries whose direct objective is to restrict India's strategic autonomy, particularly, let's say, in the Indian Ocean. So then the question is, as it goes forward, the luxury of sitting on the sidelines and sitting astride fences for India will reduce as it goes down, because it's just getting too big. So when you're so big, the decision have ramification even if you take an action or not take an action. And I think that's the road India is on. The question whether it's complicated, yes, it's complicated, but it's complicated for every country. And would India be able to sort of navigate through it? Yes, it'll be able to navigate through just like every other country does. I mean, Europe is in a similar situation. Certainly, America is in a similar situation where it decides where to intervene, when not to intervene, how much to intervene, how long to stay, how not long to stay. And so you see that from America's side, whenever we are acting, very few people are happy. Some people are saying you stayed too long. Why did you go into Afghanistan? Why did you go into Syria? Then they would say, well, you left too early. And it was a betrayal of us because you left too early. And so, those are the issues that you get when you are a big power. India will suffer and face those themselves very soon as it rises. And they'll have to navigate it, but it's got smart people like Jaishankar and Anil and you and all the rest of them, and you'll figure it out how to do it. But yes, I think the days of standing on the sidelines are gone. I think the days of standing tall and being counted are in the future, and India will have to wade through those decisions case by case as it goes forward.
Gosh, there is one more question. I don't know. Thank you so much. Which is
Thank you.
If you would like to answer that, that is the. Could you say the importance of Northeast India in the Indo-Pacific region and in Southeast Asia too? And the need, I don't know, I can't understand the question, and the need and urgency of India-Japan strategic partnership in the Indo-Pacific region to counter the dragon's aggression in respect to sovereignty in today's world. Any comment?
Yes, I was wondering how long the dragon or the bear would make it into the conversation. But anyway, no, I think the importance of the Northeast in any element of Indo-Pacific strategy is critical, absolutely critical. And I think Prime Minister Modi and this government deserves due credit of elevating and integrating the Northeast better into the rest of India than previous governments have done. So they deserve it. I think Japan deserves credit for partnering with India. And I think this issue of Japan-India trade transit corridors that were built, the old Grand Trunk roads, the new version of it, that's a really good model for these two countries to partner across the Indo-Pacific. Not only for now working together, integrating the Northeast on the road to Thailand and over to Vietnam, working on similar efforts across IMEC and perhaps even working around together with the Gulf countries in the Gulf Peninsula, doing the same trade transit corridors that did in India. I mean, that's the whole part of IMEC, is to make trade rail and road corridors across Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, and UAE and others. And so it's a great model. The elevation of Northeast is key. And I hope that when the Indian Ocean strategy is discussed at the Quad, so is the critical element of Northeast very front and center. And I think it also brings into play the importance of Bangladesh and what happens in Bangladesh. And I think perhaps some of us in the last 4 years on the American side, did not look at it, all the issues related to Bangladesh as we should have done. I think those are issues, it's a multifaceted, it's a complex issue. And I think when you look at it in the context of the Northeast, it's an important element, especially what happens in Myanmar is even. So, yes, I think a good question. The answer is a resounding yes, that it should be so.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now I'll request Admiral Sinha to please take the floor.
Well, thank you very much. Namaskar, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Abhinav Pandya, for inviting me to share my thoughts on this Indo-Pacific attitude. Of course, my gratitude to my dear friend Ambassador Trivanath for connecting me to the foundation. After reading the names of earlier speakers, and in your introductory letter, Dr. Pandya, I'm quite humbled that I've been roped in to speak here. Now, let me begin very straightforward that there is no written document on Indo-Pacific strategy as far as India is concerned. However, that is mainly because we don't have a national strategic, document, security strategy, which actually lays down as to what India wants and where does it want to be in a committee of nations. But there are enough statements by the Honorable Prime Minister, the Foreign External Affairs Minister, the Defense Minister, and very frequently the Chief of Naval Staff, um, who is actually got to implement whatever we have just talked, both Ambassador Trigunayat and Dr. Raha. They are very much part of the Navy's charter. So their statements, they make us, believe that things are happening in that direction. The India's main strategy is that we are not alone, and it has to be a combined effort of many countries. If you look at the ocean, we are looking at the diameter of nearly 3,000 kilometers, which is a huge area, and therefore India alone cannot do this. Uh, Second point I want to make, I want to take you back to 2008, while walking with then CNO Admiral Mike Mullen on the flight deck of INS Virat, the aircraft carrier. I asked him that, how are we going to ensure this maritime security? Very similar questions which are being raised here now. And he said to me that we require at least 1,000-ship navy in the world to achieve full security of the Indo-Pacific. And mind you, to my knowledge, I think the world still hasn't hit 1,000 ships, or maybe it is just about reaching there. And that was 2008. So he also talked about a collective security and not individual security. That America, why do you think this Quad has come into being? Why do you think that America is, giving this responsibility to the so-called the area commanders? That is because it is not possible for one country alone to look after all this. So I would say that it is a collective security, and therefore, whenever Prime Minister Modi speaks, he talks about Act East policy, Sagar, Mahasagar, and talks about economic and defense cooperation. This is the primary reason. We have bilateral and multilateral organizations in which we do the exercises. Coming back to what Dr. Raha said, that India and US will have to increase their interaction exercises. We have exercises with US. We started Malabar in 1993. I was part of that exercise personally. So it's not something new. Now all the other countries, Australia and Japan have joined us later, and the scope has been made bigger. All I can tell you is that the scope of that has become so big and so intense, and interoperability, what Ambassador Trigunayat mentioned, absolutely right. We are in a position where all these four countries can talk to each other with their platforms that are airborne or on the sea. And Malabar has become a very, very serious exercise. So we do have, shall I say, the structure, what is called the security architecture we do have in the Indo-Pacific. What I will come back to Dr. Araha's point again, that Indian Ocean is actually key. And I fully agree with him, because it is we are living in Indian Ocean. We are the strongest resident power, if I may say so. And we will always be the first responder. We already are. We are the preferred partner of every country in this area. We are not the leading partner. We are preferred partner of every country. And if you see Prime Minister Modi's, the neighborhood first, extended neighborhoods, etc., all that is an attempt to give confidence to our neighbors that, look, we are here for protection of this entire area. Unless there is peace and stability, you cannot have a free and fair trade. Saying what he said, Prime Minister, in the Shangri-La Dialogue 2018, which was just mentioned, I fully agree with him completely. And that was, he did not rule out China being part of this entire Indo-Pacific game. And he said it is inclusive. Well, that doesn't mean that China can have its own way. And he also mentioned that it has to be as per the rule of the law. And rule of the law is UNCLOS, which China is, hardly wants to follow. So these are some, some problems. Now let me take back to the trade that you mentioned, Dr. Raha. Can you flash that map? Where is she?
Yes, sir. Just give me a minute.
I just want to show this map and tell you that what are the sealants of what are we protecting? We are protecting these sealants of communication so that the trade. Can you enlarge it, please?
Yes, just a minute.
The red lines that we have drawn are the sealants of communication. The map has been broken into two pieces, as you can see right in the middle, mainly to, yeah, thank you. Mainly to tell you that these are the sealants of communication through which the world's trade is passing through. I have also marked this with some red triangles. Now, these are the choke points that Dr. Raraha was talking about. Now, these choke points are important, and these are the only entry-exit points from the Indian Ocean. And therefore, geographically, we are slightly blessed that we know where to, put our forces so that we monitor everybody, right? And all these choke points, mind you, the Chinese have already got a base in all these choke points, very close to them. And they are prepared that tomorrow you cannot choke their sea lanes, because China depends on energy and trade in the Indian Ocean more than any country in the world. Of course, ours is 95% of trade by volume comes on the through the ocean, and out of that it includes 80% energy. The Chinese are very similar. It's roughly about 70 to 80% that they get from here. So what I want to come back here, that if you require so many ships and so many assets, then obviously cooperation is required. And Indian Ocean being India's heart, India has to concentrate on more on this, and this is precisely what the Navy and other people are doing. Now, second point is I want to make here is that, look, only when the assets become more, when we have more and more number of ship, the capacities are increased, which Dr. Raha said, only then you will be able to effectively open out in this concentric circle, right? And cooperate and coordinate with the countries with whom we have partnership, so that we look at this entire area as a security structure of the Indo-Pacific entire region. And I would say that that is happening, but it should happen even more. How do we know who is breaking the rule where in the Indian Ocean or worldwide? So we have a very strong maritime domain awareness network in the Indian Ocean, which will now be connected with the Pacific, Western Pacific, because the Quad has taken a decision in the summit that they will have what is called the IPMDA, Indo-Pacific Maritime Domain Awareness. $5 billion have been committed. I don't know whether in the present administration it will happen or not. But $5 billion has to be spent to connect up through the satellite all the maritime domain awareness fusion centers which are existing in the world. One is in Singapore, one is in India, one is in Solomon Island, one is somewhere in Philippines. Only when all those are combined that you will be able to see this entire Indo-Pacific on one data wall. So once you see on the data wall, you know that where is some rules are being infringed. But the point is, do we have the ability to see that people who are breaking the rule, they are told at that time, please don't do it, otherwise we'll have to become very hyperactive. Now, what are we protecting the sealants from in the peacetime? We are protecting them from piracy. We are the terrorism, attack by the Houthis. You just saw. Just to give you a figure, Dr. Raha, for 100 days, 21 warships were deployed in the Arabian Sea and 5,000 crew. The aircraft and UAVs flew 900 hours in those days. And you must have seen that number of attacks that were carried out on Houthis, by Houthis. The ships, the moment they came out of Bab el Mandab is, the Gulf of Aden, And they were escorted by the Indian naval ships to the nearest Indian harbor. Repair was effected, and the ships were sent, escorted out of Indian Ocean. So this is in that bigger, so what is called the our duty towards the global common, and this is exactly what Indian Navy did. I just give you a figure of 100 days. 24/7 our ships are deployed, what is called the mission based deployment. They are present on all choke points, if you like. As we talk, 24/7, either a ship or a maritime patrol aircraft or both or even submarine. They are all deployed and they are feeding into the maritime domain awareness network through the satellite communication. As you know that we have a GSAT-7 satellite which is looking only at the maritime domain awareness and communication. And it is also got linked with some other satellites after that 2+2 agreement has been signed, the intelligence sharing. So I think things are moving in correct direction. I would say that the India's approach to this, that take everybody along, is important. Otherwise, you will look like a hegemon, which the Indian government, or in India, we don't have that approach. We don't have that attitude. So these are all called the non-traditional threats, which I just talked about. And there are IUU, as this unreported, unregulated fishing, where the Chinese ships are very, very active. And one very important task is the human assistance and disaster relief. HADR is something that India is a first responder. Being a big country, I would say the most powerful country in Indian Ocean, we always respond, not only here, but these days you will see that Indian government is responding to HADR situation even far off. Turkey, which is not very friendly. When that happened, the Indian aircraft with the relief material was first to reach. The rule book in Indian Navy is that every ship which sails out, whether it is going out for a normal routine sortie or training, always carries an HADR brick, BRIC. Now, there are containers in which the necessary items to provide the first relief are all stored. Depending upon the size of the ship, the container size is bigger or smaller, and they can be deployed. That's why you must be wondering, how come something happened in Yemen and our ships were there? How come our ships reached, in Mediterranean and pulled out people from areas which were disturbed? So we have very much there, but indeed there is no end to, there is no limit to how much can you have. Now, as far as the hardcore security challenges, which I think the focus is a little more, let me come and speak about that a little bit. We have, as the time is passing, you will find that the competition for the resources is going to become more. And this competition, there is all possibilities that it may turn into conflict. And this is what we don't want that to happen. And therefore, our equation with most of the countries who are operating in the Indian Ocean, you gave some figures, Dr. Raha, absolutely right. At any one point in time, there are warships of nearly 37 countries present in the Indian Ocean 24/7 from different countries. So this is the type of number of warships that I'm talking about, and that opens the can for chances of friction and contest, and that is what we need to avoid. As we all know that now the two superpowers are in competition for the superiority in the world. The whole geopolitics is changing, which Ambassador mentioned about. By making Mahasagar India, it is quite possible that India is enlarging its shall I say sphere of influence to G20, into the entire IOR, going beyond the IOR, and that is one way to go, that we don't fall into any sort of camp, because you just see what is happening in Bangladesh. Very important. That's an important point that you brought out, Dr. Pandya. And the response was, I'm quite happy to see that the response is very much on the dot. Now, what is happening is Bangladesh has been paid enough attention. But unfortunately, Bangladesh has a problem of the penetration of the ISI and the large number of Pakistani infiltration as far as the radicalization is concerned. So what is happening right now is a very dangerous situation. And on top of that, the person who's been installed there, and I regret to say by the United States of America, Yusuf Saab jo hai, he has invited China to make some passages which take them through into Bay of Bengal. He wants to start a new theater. Now there is a very small place in Bangladesh which is very close to our border, and that is called Lal Munir Hat. They have been invited to build a runway in Lal Munir Hat, which has got no reason to have an airfield. The Chinese, as far as my input is concerned, 3-4 days back, the Chinese contractors have already reached there, and they're already doing a survey. And it is only 120 kilometers from Chicken's Neck, the Siliguri corridor. So it's not, we are talking about something very big. And that is why you will find that warning coming from the Indian MEA on and off regarding refugee, regarding, the atrocities against the minorities. It is all pointing in the direction that this soft power is not going to work. And I must say, hats off to Dr. Raha. I have been saying this for a very long time, that soft power does not work till it is backed by enough hard power. And it is my belief. So what do we do? Let me cut myself short here. Myanmar position, you know what is happening. Myanmar is likely to break up at any time. Or if it doesn't break up, it will remain a chaotic country the way it is. And the worst thing which can happen is, which is happening, is China is hobnobbing both with the military regime and the insurgent groups. They're supplying arms to each one because they have a problem. They have an port in Chaptu, which has got pipelines running right up to Kunming refinery. The Iranians offload their oil, the Saudis offload their oil, it goes through pipelines. They have to protect because it is passing through the entire insurgency area. So they have a real stake. The energy security is, now making it hard part is not very difficult. I'll tell you why. This Malabar is what? It's a combination of navies of 4 countries. These are the same 4 countries who are in Quad. All they have to do is they have to link Malabar and place it with the Quad. Okay, Quad will use services, say, you can say it in diplomatic words, which I think Ambassador will probably, find a proper nomenclature. But I would say that linking, even a declaration that Quad can ask for the services of Malabar countries if there is some enforcement is required in any part of the world. You say this and you'll find that entire narrative will change. In fact, in one of the track 2 meetings, the Chancellor Dai Bingu, who was the boundary negotiator with India at one time, he asked me, he said, Admiral, when do you think that Quad will become more militarized? My short and immediate answer was, I said, Excellency, it depends on China. If you push us too hard, it will become tomorrow. We don't require any effort. I didn't say about Malabar, but this is what I meant. We really don't require any effort. You have enough number of ships, aircraft talking to each other, exercising. We have anti-ship strike where the strike is being guided by American aircraft and attack is being done by Indian ship and monitored by the Japanese and Australian that fall off shortage in particular place. So the standard operating procedures are really, really very advanced. And we need to do these exercises not in one area. We should do it in various locations in the Indo-Pacific. Because when you do the exercise, the Chinese will hesitate to take any action at that time. And I'm very happy that the exercises are happening in South China Sea, they're happening in the Pacific. So I will stop here because there's so much can be talked and there are more people to speak. But I'll be happy to take on any question and try and make an answer.
Thank you, sir, for bringing out all the brass tacks issues. And you are absolutely right that nothing beats the hard power at the end of the day, and it's very much required. And you have talked about, or given rather, a survey of what India has been doing, even in 100 days and onwards. Now it's been quite some time that all our ships are 24/7 providing security in the region. So we are doing our part of the thing. Of course, all these 11 choke points that showed are very critical. And fortunately, we know that China is trying to have the way China is going actually is going to be a challenge for everyone else. And they want to be a part of this, whatever kind of a security outfit happens to counter it or to be part of it in the Indian Ocean as well. So that's something I think we need to be very, very careful. Good thing is, and very assuring and reassuring, as you mentioned, that we are always in the state of readiness, which is extremely important. Of course, our neighborhood is something that we need to really be careful about, because that's where, like the Vibhishan, we might have some problems that can happen. And Bangladesh is already becoming a greater nuisance, especially under the current dispensation. And so we need to be very careful. And your suggestion of linking Malabar with Quad in case any enforcement is needed is extremely important, because that provides us the kind of projection that one needs for the right cause, not necessary for helping the hegemonism was one against the other. So thank you so much for very, very detailed presentation. And now I'd like to request Mr. Atul Sharma to share his thoughts with us. Please unmute yourself.
Good evening, everybody. I'm delighted to be a part of this session, and I was really not aware about the actual agenda of this forum. And I'm just told in the 24 hours notice that it will have a blue economy, etc. Looking at my profile in Gujarat Maritime Board, is the oldest maritime board in India. So I could understand what is the importance of this forum and what are the discussion going on. So I would like to little bit shift the discussion rather than also on blue economy, but also myself has some experience of kind of oil business, the oil spill, as well as neighboring countries shipbreaking, and also the strategic support of some of the country which we rely, but sometimes they are very crooked, they are greedy fox. So long, I will just start with blue economy and followed by some of my views and experience as a government of Gujarat officer with other countries from the loan and World Bank and a kind of strategy. So please share my presentation and then I'll start my
Yes, sir. Just give me a
thought process on blue economy.
Sir, is it visible?
Yeah, it is visible. Just make it full screen in PPT mode.
Yes.
Yes, I'll just give you a little bit about our organization. It is a Indian Register of Shipping, which Admiral Saab would be aware about the organization. They are a classification society, which certifies surveys certification of the ships, stability point of view, and compliances of the international treaties and things in our countries on behalf of DG Shipping. They used to check all those things. So, and ISPL, the organization which I am working, is basically specifically on the shipbreaking, shipbuilding, as well as other safety and environmental issues which I am dealing at the moment. So, next. So, I have a 38-year experience in Gujarat Maritime Board, right from bottom to top. I am by training civil engineer. I did my master's in environment engineering and pursuing my last semester is LLB going on in international law. So in Gujarat Maritime Board, I was instrumental for construction of the ports, PPP model, and along with that, environment management inbuilt with the with the strategies of the proposed blue economy inbuilt with the ports, which I will just tell you. Those are the things. Next. These are our present clients and all. Please keep it. Please keep it. This is our presence across the world. Okay. Sir, so long blue economy is concerned, we have been as a Gujarat Maritime Board, we have been called for a certain area because we have a 1600 kilometer in Gujarat. So what are those resources for the exploitation of certain resources in sustainable manner? The final draft is already published, but it is not being declared so far because there are a lot of strategic issues. Next. Sir, these are the key issues: fisheries and aqua. Previous slide. Fisheries and aquamarine cultures, then maritime transport and logic, then logistics, then marine tourism, renewable energy, deep sea explorations, then coastal infrastructure and development, and international collaboration. Sir, as far as fisheries is concerned, we have Maritime Zone Act. Some of the fishermen from Bangladesh, some of the fishermen from Pakistan, they used to overexploit our resources in exclusive economic zone, and for that, our fishermen are deprived of certain good fishes. That is what we are sometimes handling the issues. And
Excuse me,
fishermen,
Mr. Sharma.
Sir.
Dr. Sharma.
Yeah.
Sharma. Sorry for the intervention. I'll request you to focus your speech on the main environmental issues, that are the key concerns in the Indo-Pacific and the blue economy.
Sure.
So basically in this webinar, we are covering different aspects of Indo-Pacific. Dr. Ara spoke about the strategic aspects. Admiral Sinha spoke about the defense and naval related issues. Ambassador Trigunath focused more on the diplomatic issues. And from you, I expect you to focus more on the key environmental issues, blue economy and the island economy and all those things. So please keep your comments concise.
Yeah, understood. But so long as fisheries is concerned, it is really depriving our economic things because over exploitation of the fisheries by neighboring fishermen, the big trawler. So that is what one of the area of blue economy which India is doing. We have a fish cage culture also, which is exploited because in the very compressed manner, some fish are being developed in a 2-year time or 1-year time, like cobia and others. So we have some system and subsidies along fisheries resources that these are just previous slide. I'll just scroll it and then I'll speak on the environmental issue and oil spill. Yeah. So fisheries and aquamarine, maritime transport and logic, then logistics, then marine tourism, renewable energy, deep sea exploration. And important thing is marine biodiversity conservation and protecting marine ecosystem and biodiversity while addressing the challenges like over-exploitation, overfishing, and pollution, especially oil pollution. This is one of the main subjects today. I'll speak on that. So a way to protect and preserve the blue economy, which is one of the important aspects of the blue economy, which India has done a lot of things in collecting oil spill as well as the individual oil spill. Every port has to have an oil spill plan. Next. Therefore, sir, I would like to say that India is importing oil almost about 235 million metric ton, and which is about 83 of we are dependency, 84% dependency on the oil. So long as world is concerned, we have 2 million metric ton transportation each year. So out of this, there is a single drop oil which really disastrous. So as far as statistics with National Institute of Oceanography and NIOT is concerned, 1 into 1 million incident occur for the oil tanker sabotage, and also as far as collision is concerned. So oil spill is very disastrous things which we have to take care. Otherwise, issues regarding blue economy will be badly deprived. So impact on oil spill, which have a devastating environmental, economic, and social consequences. They kill marine life, destroy habitat, and affect fisheries. If we see last year, 1 year back or something, one is the oil tanker sabotage at Singapore. The Singapore and our Coast Guard also was deployed there and to recover the oil spill and mitigate the oil impact. We have a international legal framework, which IMO convention is there, OPRC convention, and another is a oil spill cooperation fund for the joint country oil spillage. Next slide. Another thing is the transboundary movement of the oil spill. Suppose oil spill is occurred or some incident is occurred near Karachi and the leak is find its way to the Gulf of Kutch where precious marine national park and corals are there. So these are what called the transboundary oil spill. So for that, responsibility of the polluter should be fixed from the origin of the oil spill. For that, we have to have a joint responsibility and bilateral agreement with the neighboring countries, and we should have a oil resource pool system should be there. Whereas as India is concerned, we have a neighboring ports like Adani ports, like GMB ports, like Vadinar port. We have some oil pool systems. If in case of oil spill is occurred, so neighboring port facilities mobilized. So like that, we should have an intercontinental or inter-country oil spill cooperation should be there, which is at the moment absent, absolutely absent. Next. For that, advanced detection oil spill system should be launched. As the Ministry of Earth Science in National Institute of Ocean Technology has already tested this thing, and we all are utilizing it. Like satellite and AIS-based monitoring enable real-time tracking of the vessels and detection of the illegal discharges. We should have oil spill fingering, fingerprint of the oil, which tanker has spilled what kind of oils. So that is oil sampling, and we have a good institute in Dehradun about oil spill fingerprint. So we can find out which tanker has spilled how much oils, and accordingly responsibility can be fixed. We should have drone and aerial surveillance as well as VTMS also is one of the important things with the high resolution radar could be used. Gujarat Maritime is going to have a 1600 kilometer VTMS system in order to detect the oil spill. Next. Artificial intelligence in oil spill management is one of the important tools which India in some of the port are using it. Real-time spill detection AI, public-private partnership, which is a good business for oil spill contingency plan and combatment plan. There are some companies coming up which are shaking hand with government of India and Gujarat about the oil spill, and they have some residual fund. And as per Merchant Shipping Act, we will charge some oil cess for tanker basis. And according to that, if there is an unknown polluter, this fund can be used as a corpus fund. European agency has one of good example where we should replicate in our regions, especially in the Malacca trade and our east coast, where the oil traffic is increased now compared to west nowadays. Next. So we should strengthen the global response and innovations across the country, because in case there is a oil spill, no one can prevent it, because we should have a monitoring, and we should have a micrometeorological, all models should be ready, so that in which season oil cloud will travel in which direction. If such data is available with us, we can send our team and detect the oil and recover the oil before it reaches to the precious marine resources. So technology is important, and we should strengthen ourselves with the neighboring country so that in case of any oil spill scenario, we can use it. And IMO has also given a good mandate on that double hull tanker should be mobilized. 2009 was the phase out period. Now almost, I think there is a double hull tanker are in place in the float. Next. Next. Yes. Sir, what is the conclusion? Is government has placed strong emphasis on marine pollution abatement through international cooperation, technology and structured recovery plans, recognizing the ocean's role in supporting fisheries, marine tourism, water transport, seabed mining, and tidal energy policy, focuses on conserving biodiversity and maintaining water quality as a natural states in natural states. Key initiatives include regulatory framework, coastal regulation zone plans, and active participation in global marine conservation efforts. Sir, this was my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharma Saab. A very informative presentation that you gave. Of course, you mentioned about how do we protect the marine and biodiversity systems, how we fight the oil spills, what kind of technologies are required, how the AI can be used, how a new policy can be, how the advanced detection mechanism must be created. But for all this, of course, as you rightly mentioned, global solidarity and cooperation is absolutely essential. So thank you very much for talking about the blue economy and what it constitutes and how this get impacted. As in one of the conferences, I remember the Indian Ocean Conference, they said the oceans are crying. There is an overexploitation and there is destruction of the marine wealth inside. So I think this is a global commons, as India says always, and we need to work together for this. So at this stage, I must thank you, and I must pass it on to Abhinav to carry forward if there are any questions.
Chair, can I just butt in for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Abhinavji, just give me a minute. No, coming back to, what was just said now, it's important. One point that I want to make is that at any point in time, the oceans are filled with 90% of commercial ships. Is only 10% which is warship. So the focus of this entire security that we are talking about, we're actually talking about security of sea lanes of communication. So there's no doubt that, the importance of the trade and whatever you have mentioned, and as I said, the Indian Register of Shipping, an entire lot of pollution issues, they are very high on agenda. The second point I want to make is that in the HADR, I have been advocating for some time now, and I hope that at least Indian government will do, that few more things need to be added to human assistance and disaster relief, HADR, under the ambit. Number one is protection of the seabed communication cables. Very important. It's peacetime, but it has got a dual role of wartime as well, number one. Secondly, the potential damage to our ships, merchant ships or maybe warships, by the the underwater unmanned autonomous vessels. We don't get to know what is happening inside. And if you find out, which the navies are now become more careful. And third one, very important what you mentioned, provide environmental protection to marine ecology for its sustainable use. And mind you, it was on this point that China was pinned down in South China Sea when they started reclaiming the land in the islands, and they were told that you're destroying the ecology. And this entire gamut of the Indo-Pacific security, that this was one of the driving factors, other than they're not letting ships go without being challenged. They're letting the aircraft fly over it. So I thought I'll make this 2 point. Some work is already happening, but the whole world has to make note of this. This is a new threat, and it is not a wartime threat. And China was displaying that they have made a shape which can cut. He's a cable cutter. And he's showing it to the whole world. I mean, I said, look, they're trying to protect the cable, and he's saying that I'm making cable cutters. So this is the attitude of that country. So we have to be quite right. If the shipping gets affected, we will be in deep trouble, because entire of this, growth, trade, etc., is all hinging on that sea. हमारा 95% उधर से आता है, sea से आता है. We have no choice. We don't have any friends on the land borders. What land trade will you do? So thank you, Chair, for giving.
Thank you very much.
Sir, a second. Yeah, so long as ecology and conservation is concerned, China is depending on dugong and some of the mammals, which is a wildlife threatened species in India and entire world. So I would just like to throw a question that if they exploit this kind of species, there is a disaster on ecology in marine ecology. So they are largely dependent on those species which are threatened and endangered species Wildlife Act, as per Wildlife Act. So that is what they are doing. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Admiral Sinha, can you? Sir, I have a few questions for you. Sir, with the way situation unfolding in Balochistan, it seems that CPEC is going to be facing a major threat in the future, the security threat. And given that, can we say that China's vulnerabilities and insecurities in the Indian Ocean, particularly concerning the choke points, are likely to increase? And if India is seen hobnobbing with the US or getting closer to the US, will that make China more insecure, aggressive? How will that play out? That's my first question. And second question is, I mean, for that, perhaps we need a separate discussion with you, and I'll definitely invite you very soon for that. But would you like to give us a brief overview or a comparative assessment of the Chinese and Indian naval strengths and the intelligence capabilities in the Indian Ocean?
Thank you. Very important questions, and they don't have very straightforward answers, and some of them can't be answered really. But as you said, the second part, the second question, we'll leave it for some other session because it will require a separate. Coming back to first one, the Balochistan. Well, Indians never had any doubt that CPEC is a no-go. So we know that it is, not going to succeed on the account of, the Pakistanis have actually, they are fleecing the Chinese, and they have not realized. They should have realized it by how Pakistan fleeced America. This guy should have been careful. Now the China's vulnerability are quite a lot. It is not only because of Balochistan. China cannot support its entire naval fleet. Why do you think they have not come out in a big way in Indian Ocean? Because supporting it is a little difficult. They say, you're far from home, we are very much vulnerable. And if you got fixed bases in Djibouti and here and there, then you're also declaring that this is the target that you can attack. If I am an enemy for China, I'll make sure that first I neutralize those areas, whatever way, the covert, overt, whichever way. So that is the vulnerability. Second problem they don't have an air cover for their fleet. It means their fleet can be challenged and they can be hit by air to surface missiles from a UAV or from an aircraft. And for protecting that, they don't have an air cover. And that is why till their aircraft carriers, the fourth one becomes fully operational, which will take some time, they will be very hesitant to come out into the Indian Ocean. So that vulnerability. But problem is not that. Our problem is the proxy, the vassal state of China, which is Pakistan. I call it Pakistan Autonomous Region of China. I always call it PAR. Well, this fellow, he has been, armed to the teeth. And Pakistan has just one enemy, which is to his east. We are the only enemy. Every damn gun is pointing in this direction. To be very honest, I shouldn't be saying, but I'm glad that TTP is taking their pants off in some other areas, so that at least some of their attention is gone there. So the point is that China, what you see now, they're going to give them 6 submarines or 8 submarines. The warships have already reached. J-17 fighters, one more fighter is likely, one more type. So these are only arming Pakistan. It is not that Pakistan wants to fight. It is the China's fight which is on the shoulders of Pakistan. And that is a bigger problem because, it has reduced our, shall I say, flexibility to operate in the Arabian Sea particularly. And that is actually the problem. So anyway, few things are happening because a lot of things we'll not be able to do. Similar thing, go back to Bangladesh. If something happens in Bay of Bengal, all our long-range missile, nuclear missile, all those tests are being done from there. And it can be monitored. Even the flight path can be monitored, the trajectory can be monitored, the speeds can be monitored. And in case there is a homing head, the parameters can be recorded. So we are likely to see more of this kind of thing. And our closeness with the US has already disturbed the Chinese. Every time you meet them, ambassador is here. Every time you meet them, the first question they will ask you that will you maintain neutrality in case China has a fight with US? At least I have been asked this question so many times. My answer is very straightforward. What is there in that? What is for me in that? Why do you want me to, if I maintain neutrality, will you tell me that your border issue I'll sort out? We don't get something in for nothing. Aap batao, what are you giving in return? Only then we will, commit on this. So, but this is the biggest area of worry. And our equation with America, unfortunately, with the change of regime, administration, things moving up and down, they slow down. But I think that we are on right track. And maintaining our equation with Russia, they have been our strategic partners for a long time. I don't want to mention everything here. But there's no way that we can ditch Russia also. So we'll have to walk that very narrow path, and I'm sure that probably Ambassador will agree that Shri Jaishankar is doing that very wisely, walking the very tight rope. And where he doesn't want to walk the tightrope, he keeps quiet. He doesn't make a statement. So that is what we can have a separate sitting on that. No problem.
Yeah.
Sir, you mentioned about this Chinese coming up with the airstrip, building the airstrip in the Munirhat. I also read about a couple of other projects, infrastructure or dual-use projects that China is constructing or doing for the Bangladesh. But do we have any effective strategy to counter that?
You see, very difficult because they're all shall I say, countries, independent countries, sovereign countries. They have that. They have all the right to do. I can't tell Bangladesh don't make friends with China, but all I can tell him that look, don't do something. You're my neighbor. Don't do something which will harass me. Now look at Maldives. Finally, I don't want to go back in time frame. Finally, we had to go and read the right act to then president that if you give this island to the Chinese, I'll cut off your every line. You will not be able to survive. So they refrained. Now what Maldives has done, last week we have come to know that they are buying weapon systems, artillery guns, APC from Turkey. For what? Uska kaun dushman hai? Pakistan is giving them some more weapon systems already, right? We have monitored that. So this is brewing. This is brewing because of whatever that if you say that you are too big and big brothers that type of rule, that will not do because smaller countries can create asymmetric nuisance. Not that we can't. It takes 24 hours to sort of obliterate them from the map. But is that the way to live? We can't live like that. That is where we have to take everybody together. Sagar ho gaya, Mahasagar ho gaya. But these problems will happen.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. And one final question for Ambassador Trivunayat. Sir, we just saw that Mr.
But that
Atul
was
Sharma
not the deal. Okay.
That's that can be off the record.
Yes.
Mr. Sharma discussed a lot about the environmental issues, the oil spill issues, and also the blue economy and all. And so I've observed that whenever we talk about Quad and Indo-Pacific, everyone wants to talk more about the environmental part, and even the US or even the Indians are also comfortable. Well, this is not a military alliance, I mean, this is more about environment, technology, and all that. But I mean, is there anything substantial happening? I mean, as a diplomat, you would certainly know better. I mean, and is there any substance to that, or it is just a cover-up?
No,
Sir,
it's not a cover-up.
very, very tricky questions. Very tricky. So long as we are concerned, India is having a lot of legislation. We are signing a lot of treaties, etc., which IMO, Basel Convention, UN, they are bringing up. But our neighbors, Pakistan, and I'm just talking about small example of ship recycling. The ship which is recycled in India, which is regulated under hundreds of regulation in environmental, along and all. Whereas Bangladesh and Pakistan, they are zero. A lot of people are killed, a lot of pollution are done. The ship owner are even European ship owner, even American ship owner who are selling their ships at the higher dollar price. There is no sources of traditional steel in the Bangladesh and Pakistan. So I will just tell you the $700 a ton a vessel is sold to Bangladesh or Pakistan, whereas India 500 we are not able to do because we have a big source, and these people are polluting a lot, and they are global trending pollution. So it is eyewash as far as neighbor is concerned. We are over-regulated, so we should be. Even Honorable Prime Minister is dismantling various old regulation on environment, which is a barrier for the development, etc. So I would say that we should also be reasonable on that. And I'm not talking about the pollution, etc. We should be. If you see war and etc., a lot of pollution, who will care for? There is a lot of missiles, there is a lot of air pollution, a lot of greenhouse gases. So it is. I was somewhere. I will see being an environmentalist that we should be reasonable in compliances.
Thank you, thank you, Ambassador Trivunayat. I would like to know your comments also from the diplomatic side.
Well, I think that Quad is a useful organization from our perspective. It actually, in my view, helps you in your strategic autonomy vis-a-vis certain other countries. And it's very important. China likes India's strategic autonomy. And that is why whenever they see that we are getting very close, they start making noises. And as Admiral Saab mentioned, they keep asking us those questions that are you really serious about it? So both Russia and China, and to some extent even the US, they like this. We don't have an alliance system. But Quad essentially is the nearest to something that where you can have your own other objectives, sir. For example, like wanting to become a partner in the global value supply chains, where you can use the American technology, the Japanese money, and the Australian outreach, something like that. Now that's where it provides India a non-confrontational space where you can do a lot in ASEAN and different other countries, which we have done, whether it is critical technologies, minerals, and all that. So this is something very important, and I think that gives us a. Secondly, you are meeting all the top 4 leaders at the one time. Apart from the various organizations, so they remain invested in this for their own reasons. Each one has their own reason. So India's approach is so far as Quad is concerned, is not security centric, and is still it believes in my view, to the extent possible, to have an inclusive approach. I mean, if China improves its strategy or its approach, well and good. If it doesn't, it knows where it's heading for, and that's where you have the Sino-US contestation that is playing out. But we don't have to be in my view, a part of the. Shouldn't be a tool for China or for the United States, because that's what many of them may be wanting. You see, I have a simple, very straightforward thinking that United States would perhaps, or the Western countries may perhaps want India and China to have a war, so that both these countries go back in time for 20 years or something, and they continue to rule the way they are doing it. So from my point of view, if China and the US fight, it's good for us. In fact, there is a study which is conducted and a book published, and the lady who was actually the PR for the Chinese ambassador in Washington, D.C., some Sun Tzu or whatever name her, she said, and in that book, basically the crux of the book is, or conclusion is, that in the war between USA and China, India would be the net beneficiary. So I would like to be in that state. And of
Great.
course, as General Saab has mentioned, there is already a blueprint. I would like to start with the Malabar becoming, saying that it is our arm, so to say. It's existed since 20 odd years, now 30 years.
Thank you, sir. So I think we come to the end of our today's discussion.
Harsh Pargat, there is one last question from one gentleman.
Okay. Harsh, would you like to?
Yes, sir. I have one question. This one is for Vice Admiral Sinha, sir. Jai Hind, sir. I would like to know, sir, what are your views on India's naval cooperation to merchant navy when it comes to passing through this Indo-Pacific region, because we are prone to attacks by others. For example, I can give several instances in 2023, 2022 where 5 of our this merchant ship, you can say shipmen or crewmen, were held hostage in African countries, and then we had to negotiate a lot. So how does Navy try to protect them from this incident that happens?
Well, I guess you're talking about how does Navy deal with the kind of piracy, hijacking, etc., taking place on the African coast?
Yes, sir. In regards to merchant navy, yes, sir. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, first of all, particularly in the Red Sea, we have ships deployed 24/7, which do the escorting of the merchant vessels in and out of the Red Sea. Now, at the moment, it is not happening. That is because of the Houthis attack, and we are keeping outside. There is an unwritten understanding that the US and the NATO forces will take on the Houthi attack inside the Red Sea. And once somebody has come out safely or somebody has come out injured, the Indian naval ship will do the escorting, taking them to various ports, getting them repaired and sending them off. But these are all mitigation. How do you prevent it? Now, there has been a talk that we should have the private armed guards on board the merchant ships. Now, I am quite okay with that idea. However, our rules are such that a lot of people are not wanting to do it. The rule is that when you enter India's territorial water, which is 12 nautical miles, the armory has to be sealed. And if you're going to be there in the harbor, Indian harbor, for a long time, then these arms have to be deposited in a shore-based armory, for which the armory is available in almost all ports. Which the merchant ships from foreign ships, they don't like it. If you recall the the Italian marine case, it was just that. And the jurisdiction is a big issue. Now 12 nautical miles, अब कौन देखने गया कि exactly 12 nautical miles है? So what happened on that ship was that when the Italian marine fired on this fishing boat, the Kerala fishing boat, they were physically inside 12 nautical miles. And this guy was just outside 12 nautical miles. So now under which law do you try them? So Government of India has done a very wise thing last year, and it was moved by the Minister of External Affairs. It has turned into an act that any attack on an Indian national or an Indian ship, whether merchant ship or warship, anywhere at sea, whether it is exclusive economic zone, whether it is territorial water, that will be counted as act of terrorism. So we have defined the terrorist at sea, which is not happening. I mean, UN has not been able to do it so far. Ambassador is here, he will tell you more on that. So what we have done is we have defined, and we have given now the powers to the court, not in those many words, but if they are terrorists as per the act, it has become an act. So it means if you arrest them, you can bring them and try them out under your law. पहले क्या होता था, if you arrested them, you used to catch all of these terrorists at sea, I mean the pirates at sea. You catch all of them, you bring them into the prison. बैठे हुए थे 150 लोग यहाँ इंडिया में बैठे हुए थे. Now they don't talk your language, you don't know their nationality. Under which law will you try them out? And you've caught them at open sea. They're not under your jurisdiction of 12 nautical miles. So these problems have been addressed. You know, the piracy has been defined, the terrorism has been defined. So now legally we are well armed. So Harshji, this is one thing that has happened. So now obviously the navies have got a lot of leeway, in arresting people and getting them. If you recall that the naval ship had shot down one, the pirate vessel in year 2008. And then the case just carried on for many years. And because there was no law, the case was running in ICJ. The party which owned the pirate ship they were asking for compensation. It was running into millions of dollars. So finally, very renowned lawyer, Sri Harish Salve, he represented India in the ICJ, and they fell back on the Indian Navy's regulations for iron, which had actually defined terrorism like this, what has become an act now. And that judgment was given on basis of that no, the Indian naval ship has got all the powers as per the Naval Act so-and-so, that anybody who's firing in self-defense, he can be destroyed. So this existed in the regulations of Navy, not from now, from the time the Navy has been there. So I think there are enough. Now coming back to little more hardcore stuff, Harshji, you may be happy to learn that any time a hijacked ship with Indian crew, if it remains for more than so-and-so days, it's a very big operation which is conducted by various people, including Navy. And they have been taken out. They have been taken out of captivity. People have been, if you recall, there was a ship where there were 10 Indian crewmen, out of which one was killed. One Bengali gentleman was killed. But, it was stormed one day by some method, and they were taken out. The Puntland army helped us. God only knows what is Puntland Army, but that was the statement which was made. And as Ambassador said, it gives us a lot of flexibility to look benign and look very worldly wise and Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. लेकिन ये hard power कभी-कभी use करना पड़ता है.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. So I guess, we come to the end of our today's session. Definitely, I would like to say that against the background of the sharpening rivalries between the global powers, we can say without doubt that we have certainly entered the phase of Cold War 2.0. And it seems that now it's not just that we have entered the phase of Cold War 2.0. This Cold War 2.0 seems to be transforming itself into the real war, some kind of a military conflict also. And the Indo-Pacific and the maritime domain, in a way, constitutes the base, the central pillar of this new Cold War 2.0, or the possible likely military war between the global powers. And there cannot be any Indo-Pacific without India. Simply by virtue of our geography, by our vast coastline, we are there, we cannot be avoided. But then India's role is certainly a very tricky question. In fact, I'd rather say it's an esoteric question, a very mystical question, how to define India's role. Everyone says India has the huge potential, but then our own security-related complexities and our choices are very difficult. We are on the horns of dilemma. Our security-related challenges in the Indo-Pacific, they are layered, complex, and convoluted. Particularly with the three neighbors, China, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, the security dimensions are not just about conventional threats or on the borders. They have a very strong dimension of the internal security too. And even in the Northeast with Myanmar also, we have a major segment of the internal security challenge too. So, and then we have traditional friendships with the countries like Russia, with countries like Iran, which are certainly adversarial powers vis-a-vis the countries like US and the Western Bloc. So choices are very difficult for us. These are very challenging for us. So it's, for any diplomat or for a geostrategic thinker, even for the defense people, it's really difficult to answer what can possibly be the India's role. But undoubtedly, we can say that, I would certainly agree with Ambassador Trigunayat that, perhaps we can let the global powers fight among each other and, wait for our problems to dissolve. But even having said that, two conclusions remain very firm, that India needs to develop its hard power in a very robust manner. And I would say comprehensive national power. And that includes a very strong and intelligence capabilities. And for that, you need to have a very robust economy in a very diversified and a very multi-dimensional manner. And for that, you also need a very robust education system and the governance system. So I guess perhaps we can focus on that at the moment. And as far as our role in the Indo-Pacific is concerned, we will have to continue being involved. We cannot be ignored. We cannot be avoided. But yes, the challenge remains how to navigate these big power rivalries. With that, I come to the conclusion. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all the eminent speakers, Ambassador Trigunayat, Admiral Sinha, Mr. Sharma, and Dr. Kaushara, who is not here. And I would also like to thank Professor Stephen Negi, who could not join because of a certain health issue. And also my Usanas team, Dr. Anita Jain, who is not here today because of, again, some medical issue. Preeti Khenta, who helped us organize, put this whole thing together. And also my Usanas interns and Ruchika and other team members. Thank you very much. We look forward to more engaging and exciting discussions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abhinavji.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you,
Namaskar, Radulji.